All right, guys, I'm excited for this convo for quite a few reasons, but I got to commend you guys for doing this because we're constantly looking for new ways to communicate and better ways to communicate. And I know I've been screaming it for years that this is a great way to like get a message out to a mass amount of people. So thanks for taking the time to do this. It's cool.
You
Cool.
bet.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I think to get going, just so like if people aren't necessarily watching this on YouTube, they can get to know your voices. So let's just do a round table of who you are, name, and like current position, and then we'll get into some backstory stuff. So
You bet. Well, thanks for having us, Ryan. I think it's important to us as we grow with our leadership in the region that we find different ways to connect with the folks out there that are actually making stuff happen for our company here. And so it's something new for us. We're excited for it. But my name is Loren Chandler. I'm the regional president in the West for Quanta Services, and just a little bit of tiny background from my standpoint. I'm a journeyman lineman. Journeyed out in 2002 and went through the Mountain States Apprenticeship Program. And I live in Utah. I'm a father of 5 and happily married 23 years, and loving family that's stood beside me through thick and thin as I traveled through the industry and worked in several places in the country and out of country. And passion is around leadership in our field, in our teams. And so I know we'll go a little bit more in depth as we go, but it's a little bit about my background.
Awesome.
Again, thanks, Ryan, for the opportunity. Like Loren said, I think it's pretty cool. We don't get a chance. We've got, 5,000 employees in the West region right now, and so we don't really get a chance to connect with everybody all the time. So this is a good opportunity to attempt to in a different way. But Steve Galagarza, president of Quanta West, which is one of the group companies within the West region. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'll just reiterate, love the podcast, love the opportunity to be here. I know it goes a long way within the industry, the conversations that take place. We hear it from our employees, so being here is pretty awesome. Dylan Welsh with Summit Line Construction, grew up in Iowa, beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids, a 6 and a 3-year-old, so they keep us active on the swing set and in the backyard. Relocated to Utah about 2.5 years ago. From Kansas City, and kind of moved around the U.S. in the industry, and just a great opportunity within the industry where it's going, and love being part of the
Cool.
show, so I appreciate it.
Flatlands to the mountains.
Yeah. The better way to put it is humidity to no humidity,
Sure.
and that's one of the things we love about it.
That's
so
glorious.
It's great. Yeah.
I worked in Saskatchewan, Canada, quite a bit, and it's like Kansas, just flat.
Oh, yeah.
But what boggled my mind, like I grew up in British Columbia, I grew up in the mountains. It boggled my mind how these guys were like, I can't go to BC. I could never live in BC. It's too claustrophobic. And I'm like, what? I think the complete opposite. Like I get into the flat spaces and I'm like, this feels closed in. But yeah.
When you're in Utah and you wake up and your front porch looks mountains and beautiful sunsets and everything, you just hope that over time you don't lose that sight, that you're not overlooking it, but it's pretty easy to enjoy.
Yeah. Cool. Loren, what do expand on your backstory a little bit? What do I need to know about you that helps me understand who you are and where you're at today?
Well, I started young in my life. I grew up in a military family, and a lot of people don't know this, but I lived in Germany part of my younger years.
No
and
kidding.
so from when I was about 8 to 12 years old, and I traveled around with my folks through the military, and then landed in Mountain Home, Idaho when I was in about the 5th grade there, and got through high school. Loved playing basketball, football, captain of the football team, and just grew up in that small town country atmosphere. And when I got out of high school, had absolutely no idea what I was going to do when I was getting out of high school. And that was back when Northwest Lineman College was barely getting started. I think they started in 95, 96 time frame. And so graduated high school in 96 and just had no idea what I was going to do. And had no idea that the industry even existed. And so on a whim, I found out about Northwest Lineman College. Matter of fact, the founder of Northwest Lineman College, Aaron Howell, his wife was one of my teachers in high school.
Oh, no kidding.
And so that's how I found out about the school.
Gotcha.
And so I started my career with Northwest Lineman College and just kind of grew from there. Mm-hmm. It's been a wild ride ever since.
When she told you about the trade and the industry, like, how did she see interest in you, like, for something different other than regular college, regular school, or like, because I try to ask this question quite a bit too, about like how you found the industry, how you found the trade, and you guys probably know just as well as anybody is like, there's not a lot of push towards the trades coming from like regular education and in school, so that's like kind of a cool way. Like, how did she?
You know, I don't know how I connect the dots.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what would intrigue me the most is that, you know, I had the opportunity to go to college, and it just wasn't for me. I just couldn't see myself in a 4-year school, and so I looked at alternatives. I looked at, you know, maybe the military and some different things there, and I had talked to some folks that had gone through this line school just right before I did, and you know, I started exploring the opportunities. I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to work with my hands, an opportunity for me to do something different every day, not be stuck in an office, doing the same thing over and over again. And so, you know, I think, you know, with what we've done with craft labor within Quanta Services, like, you have good opportunities, great opportunities to, you know, make yourself into something special, and you don't need a 4-year degree to do it. And so my passion was never around schooling. It was around getting out there and getting to work and just working hard.
Yeah, you're going to see it a lot more than we even have, is like jobs disappearing because of AI, right? Like, it's a hot topic, but like one of the jobs that's just not going to disappear for a while, because I can't see it happening, is jobs like ours, right? Yeah. Like, you're not going to be able to produce linemen robots anytime soon, not ones that work as efficiently as we do. Steve, tell me a bit about your past, where you come from.
Yeah, so grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, one of the suburbs of Philadelphia, to a working class family. My mom worked, my dad worked, frankly 2 shifts when I was a kid, and you know, I, for whatever reason, kind of an opposite story to Lorens, I was good at school. High school in particular was just kind of easy for me, frankly, and being the first kid really in my family to have an opportunity to go to college, it sort of seemed to be just the path that I was destined to go on, and frankly didn't really know much about it. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, so I remember talking to a guidance counselor in my senior year, or maybe junior year, I'm not really even sure. They're like, well, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, well, you're really good at math and science, and so maybe you should think about going to an engineering school. And so, okay. They gave me a list. I applied to a bunch of them, and I went to the one that was closest to home. So went to Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania. And from there, moved. Most of my family's from New York City, and so growing up, my parents were taking us to New York City to hang out with family and friends and whatever, and so I always naturally gravitated towards New York, and so right after college got a job with Con Ed in New York City, and you know, kind of eventually ended up here.
You happy with that decision? Obviously happy with that decision, but like at the time, choosing the path that you chose, you felt it was like the right choice for you? Or was there something else that pulled at your heartstrings?
I mean, I guess, again, my being from a family that worked and seeing my folks work, I knew that I had to work. And so I always had odd jobs like throughout junior high school, and college. And most of them were always in some sort of field of construction. And so I was always working with my hands, and whether it was like getting an odd job framing or roofing or, you know, whatever, demolition with my neighbor was a mason, and he always like put me under his wing and would take me on jobs. And so I always knew that I wanted to somehow end up in construction somehow, and I didn't really know what that path was going to be. It just kind of, for me, it was always timing, right place, right time, with a little bit of like where my interests actually lie. And so, was I happy about it then? I don't know. I think as a kid, I didn't really think about it too much.
Sure.
I was just like,
Pick something and go that way.
yeah. And am I happy about it now? Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. I was talking to had a lineman here a couple months ago, Landon D's talking about he was always in like construction and then got into same sort of thing, but went into line work, but then like quit, went back to school, and then I was like, that's kind of a cool thing. Like I would love to encourage people to do that. Like get a trade and then leave it for a while and go back to school if you want to go back to school. So many people get caught in the money train right away, right? And they're just like, okay, I'm a lineman now, or I'm just going this way. But go back, do some like construction management or something like that. Like you could really be a benefit in the future to do that, right? And just take the time while you're young to do it, because you have like 0.0 responsibilities at 24.
Yeah, for sure.
Dylan, tell me something about yourself that helps me understand who you are.
Well, I was a horrible student in high school, really bad. I think I chose the path of civil engineering because I had an uncle that was a civil engineer, and it looked like it was stable and provided some opportunity. My parents were hardworking, very driven, and so my education up to college didn't really demonstrate that same behavior. Early on in school, kind of also a horrible student, but at that point it was more just the challenge of getting through it that I liked. Coming out of school, I remember having a couple interviews within the civil engineering side of it, and at this point I was just dedicated. I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to design buildings or bridges or whatever it may be. And I remember hearing about the electrical, utility design side of it, and how there was a 10-year runway of opportunity, and that's what sold me. I said, that's, everybody else is saying it's up and down, and they're saying we have 10 years. Well, that's 15 years ago.
Yeah,
we're looking at
I was going to say, it turned
30,
into 50
right?
years.
Very quickly after coming in, I had an opportunity to go to the field in West Virginia for about a year and a half, and did that kind of rotation, year and a half in West Virginia, Rhode Island, Buffalo, and very early on realized, hey, design's enjoyable to an extent, but I don't want to live behind a computer. It's not really where my heart's at. I like the business side. I like the operation side, and kind of progressed from there out of it. But I do feel like the schooling kind of gave me the education's one thing. The challenge and just working through something challenging is more, I feel, the value add for me was. So.
100%. Steve, tell me about you working for Con Ed.
Yeah.
And you shared that immediately you're thrown in the fire, thrown to the wolves, working downtown New York after 9/11. What was that like?
It shaped a lot of, where I am today. I was a 22-year-old kid. I just graduated college. I think a little bit earlier in my progression, I realized I didn't want to really truly go down the engineering and design path. I really wanted to be on the management side of things. And so I ended up in this like management training program at Con Edison. It was like this rotation thing, and they threw me straight into the deep end. They put me on as a supervisor of some maintenance and construction crews out in Brooklyn. And September 11th happened. I happened to be in Queens that day at Con Ed's training facility, and watched the first tower come down, walked 8 miles home to my apartment, and waiting for my roommates to get home, and my one roommate who was working in the World Trade Center, waiting for him to come home. And one of the guys that came home with all the dust all over him, thank God he came home. He's my best friend to this day. But our crews, it took about a week or two for them to get their emergency response center set up downtown. And so the crews that I was supervising, we were kind of on standby for the first about week or whatever, but then they pulled us in. And so, just again, 22-year-old kid, not really having any real work experience. getting thrown into that. You know, you got thousands and thousands of first responders right there on scene, and we're trying to get the power back on as soon as we possibly can, temp power anyway. So we're, putting feeders out in the curb and gutter, and trying to put protection in place to make sure that all that stuff was safed off. The longest shift I'd ever worked until that point in my life was maybe an 8 or 12-hour
Sure.
shift, and going to work in 16-hour shifts and kind of around the clock. It was just, you had to grow up. I had to grow up really fast, right? It was very fast paced, and there's a lot going on, obviously, a lot of emotion. And so, yeah, I mean, that experience just woke me up.
What were people like at that time? Like, were they helpful? Was it chaotic? Was everyone trying to work the best they could together to make things happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing perspective of humanity, right? And just to see an entire city, an entire nation really come together and get together for one cause. Again, the power's out in New York City. You'd think like, oh, well, who's going to loot what and whatever, but that was not the case. I mean, we had business owners that were, offering us lunch and dinner and whatever, and everybody just kind of came together and just to make things happen. It was actually a pretty beautiful experience. And I don't know if things are different today, but you contrast that to, stories of just a couple of weeks ago here in Houston. You got, there's powers out down here, and you got people, beating up the linemen that are trying to get the lights back on. And I don't know. I don't know if things have changed, if society's that messed up, but for me, it was a very awakening experience and a very uniting experience.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot about that period of time, like people saying, 9/11 was obviously horrible, but if they could just have that feeling of humanity post 9/11,
Yeah.
if we could just do that more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Loren, you go to Northwest Lyman College. What happens after that?
So, after that, I started my career in Nevada, working on some gold mines in Nevada, and worked out of Elko, Nevada for about a year.
What'd you think of gold mines?
It was
Big open pit mines?
It was big open pit mines.
Yeah, I worked a lot at open pit.
It was
Copper and gold
interesting.
mines.
It's where I got my start.
Cool.
And so, learned a lot
Yeah.
there, but, knew I wanted more. And so I was working in southern Nevada, and I ran across some folks there in Tonopah, Nevada. Matter of fact, we was doing a job on one of them Round Mountain gold mine down there near Tonopah, and I ran into some folks that were a part of the union apprenticeship and out of Local 57 in Salt Lake, and started talking to them a little bit, and they pointed me in the right direction to get my application into Mountain States apprenticeship program, and started there with Mountain States in 98, late 98, 99, and then I journeyed out in 2002 and was I was mainly a distribution lineman. I didn't do much transmission until after I journeyed out, and even after I journeyed out, I didn't do a ton of transmission. But I spent a period of time, went to the utility, Rocky Mountain Power, Pacificorp, right in my hometown, and I made it there about a year and a half, and I was home every night. It was kind of one of those things a lot of linemen aspire to be.
Yeah.
Is home every night because you're away from your families a lot. But I realized very quickly there that there was limits on my career.
Yeah.
It was seniority based, and the only way you get anywhere with that particular utility is just through seniority, and so I made the hard decision to leave the utility, leave my comfortable home there where I was home every night, and jump back into construction. And I gotta give it to my wife. I mean, at that time I had kids as young as 4 years old in the house, and I had 5 kids, right? And so
Wild.
it was just jumping out of the utility,
Leave security,
and let's go see how this thing goes, right? And so I went through a period of time there when I went back into construction that I'll say that I had a little bit of ego and arrogance with myself, and I quickly found there. I found myself. I was talking to you before, and I went up to Canada around 2009, and I don't know if people remember the industry back in 2008 timeframe. Like, work was tough.
Yeah.
Like, work, it fell off, and my ego and arrogance got the best of me, and I had to go looking for work, and so I went up to Canada, and I worked there for a little bit. Then I heard about a few guys that were starting a new company out of Utah. Was going to call it Summit Line Construction, and got a phone call to come back and be the first working foreman to start Summit Line Construction. And
That's cool.
It's pretty damn humbling to think about the different years. In September 2009, I remember loading the first set of line trucks, and first line truck and first bucket truck, and I remember we loaded tools out of Carl's horse barn in Rupert, Idaho. There, I remember.
It's wild to
vividly.
think about beginnings, man.
Yeah. And we were so. I mean, it was such a different period of time. I remember giving each other, when we got a $10,000-$15,000 job just to keep going. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, just seeing the transition along the way from that to where it is today, I couldn't be more blessed with how it turned out. But I do think it forms you into the individual that you are by going through those trials and tribulations that you have throughout your career, and then building off of that, because it was not not easy. It was not an easy path that I took.
I actually heard Tim Kennedy talking about this yesterday on a social media post. But anyway, he was asked a question like, what do you think that young people are missing nowadays? And he's like, struggle. He's like, it seems like we just naturally, we're doing well as a race, and we're just not going through as much struggle. But it's like you just said, it's like those doing hard things that build character, resilience, like all of the makes you who you are. But you got to go through those hard things, and you got to push through those hard things in order to get that ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about transitioning. Get it constantly on social. Get questions. Hey, Ryan, you went to management. What was that like? Or what was it like going from lineman to, general foreman? Should I do that? I'm nervous about it because I'm not sure I can do it. And da-da-da-da-da. They really love being, linemen. Really love being linemen when they're linemen. They don't want to do anything else. But we need leaderships. We need leaders, right? So talk about that transition and what's like for you, whether it's from the field or from school to your job or like whatever. It's that taking the next step thing. It's hard, right?
Yeah. The biggest thing that an individual has to realize when you make that transition, it's not about you, right? Like it's about the people that you surround yourself with. It's about the people that are working for you, and realizing. I heard a quote here a couple of years ago that has always stuck with me. That when things are going good, you need to look through the window and look at your team that's making that happen. When things are going bad, you need to look in the mirror there. And I think that stuck with me, and there's more truth around that than one might think in the industry.
Yeah, instead of pointing fingers, point your thumb.
Yeah. I think if you as management, if you point the finger at the field all the time, you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
And that field is doing great things every day. Yeah. Management needs to understand what the perspective is of the field before they jump to any kind of conclusion and think they know what's going on.
How do you walk that line from somebody that's walked that line though? Like, I think that's another contentious, nervous point for some of these guys. It's like, I'm from the field, I'm a guy's guy, or whatever you want to quote unquote guy's guy. Now you step into management. Now you drink the Kool-Aid, or you're one of those guys, like you're not looking out for us anymore. Like, how do you walk that line of like, hey, I get it, guys, I was you, but this is how, I don't know, how do you walk that line?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a fine line there that you have to tread, but I think the folks in the field want to do the right things. There's nobody out there that is blatantly trying to go out and get hurt or get somebody else hurt in the industry. I think the line that you need to walk, like, you have to continue to find ways to emotionally connect with the field, to find different ways to utilize some teaching moments to where it connects with that field, and where light bulb click goes off, right? Like, when you think about showing up to a job site and seeing somebody not wearing safety glasses, it's not all about just writing a ticket and saying, hey, you're going to take 3 days off and because you're violating policy. It's about going up to that individual and saying, hey, I know you're not wearing your, I know you have a daughter that's playing a softball game tonight. What do you think about that, right? And then have some discussion around something that connects with that individual. And then at the end of the conversation, say, by the way, what happened if something penetrated your eye and you weren't able to see your daughter play in that softball game, right? Like, it's handling it, it's thinking through it in a different way with the leadership in the field. You have to find a way to connect the dots there and not just feel like it's just management having a hammer on them every time you see something going on, because I've seen it. I know that there's been that division for many years between the field and management, and it's one thing that we're really trying to do is to eliminate that barrier. Like, we understand the struggles that are out there. They're real out there in the field.
Yeah. Well, from your guys' perspective.
Well, first I want to piggyback on what Loren said. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I see help Loren walk that line is that he is not strictly a manager. He brings more from a leadership side than he does from a management side. And where I see the biggest pushback to people walking the line or changing from maybe field to more office setting type are the people that become just managers and just worried about the financials and completely competent in the management side of it. But the leadership side is what, if you can bring leadership traits and have that connection, which Loren's pretty naturally able to build connections and where he's strong at, it helps that navigation of walking the line make it a lot easier.
So what does a good leader look like to you?
To me, a good leader is somebody that realizes just what Loren said, is you're not in it for yourself. You're in it for, when I think about Summit Line, we have 1,000+ employees. And when people ask me what bothers me when I go to bed, it's, are we going to be able to maintain the opportunities for those employees? I kind of, going back to where I came from on the design side, I quickly went to the field from a project engineer standpoint. And what I had the opportunity is fell into some great mentors that were leaders that you talked about the struggle and the challenge that people need to go through. And I deliberately picked going to those struggles just naturally. But what it provided me is the opportunity to be surrounded by mentors and great leaders that really expanded my thought process and made me realize there's more than just a design side. There's a vast side of the business, whether it's any industry, that I can learn from a management side, but also that people grow by having those connected conversations. That I had the opportunity, I can think back to a rental house in West Virginia with a retired Dayton Power and Light, engineering manager that was kind of on his swan song, last job he's going to do, and how much I was able to grow in 12 months of conversations on a couch because we didn't have a TV because we were so busy type deal. And so to me, that leadership is always continuously challenging individuals to get better, having those connected conversations, giving the people the opportunity to hear it and expand their knowledge. That was something I had. I was in meetings at 22 years old that I shouldn't have been in, or arguably shouldn't have been in, but hearing those conversations and having those people to ask the questions allowed me to grow. And that's when I view myself, that's the individual I want to be, is provide those opportunities, and, provide those coaching moments. And if it's not me that can do that, be able to connect with a Steve or a Loren or somebody else in the industry that can do that for them.
I always got kind of annoyed with the top secret power line. It was always your leadership's planning the master plan for the world, and then you're not privy to it at all. And I always loved it when I was included, when I felt a part of what was happening, not just the tool being used to make it happen, And I think that's a large portion of leadership fails at that as well, right? Not making the line hands included in the convo. And I get they can't be included in it all because they'll just go away and their mouths are big sometimes, but making them feel included enough that they feel a piece of it and a part of it.
I think with that, and whenever we have challenges with what we're doing in regards to safety or quality, whatever it may be, the answers are in the field. Listen to the field. They'll tell you where to go with it. They might not tell you in the most politically correct way, but that's us as management to maneuver around that. But when you listen to the field, good things happen.
But also in reverse, right? So what you're keying in on is something that definitely has been frustrating throughout my career, which is you get certain regimes of management or leadership, right? That just kind of always have the curtain pulled back, right? And they're always having this conversation in this side room over here, but you can't hear what's going on. It doesn't do anybody any favors to do that, right? Just pull the curtain back and tell everybody what's actually going on, and then you get that true input from the field or the office, wherever it's coming from.
Yeah. It also brings the culture together. I mean, I think at Summit we have our town halls, we have our performance reviews that are pretty robust in terms of individuals that are sitting in the room, and it allows that connectedness within the organization that continues, and everybody feels part of that culture. I also think there's an outward, when you're looking at it from a distance, the conversations feel a lot bigger than what they really are, and we sometimes hold them closer to the chest than they really need to be, and there's really limited conversations that need to be that way. And so again, that openness for those conversations and getting people involved is key.
You're right. Leaders often feel like they have to have the final plan before they can deliver that to the team or whatever, right? But just getting in and being like, hey, this is what we're thinking. It could be totally stupid, or it could be not even the final direction or even a part of the final plan, but allowing them to contribute to that plan in whatever way, shape, or form, have a voice, whatever, is super important. If you want to be a better communicator, I think that's a big piece of it. Actually communicate right from the beginning. Hey, this is what we're thinking. I don't know. Does it sound silly?
Yeah, and be okay to change when the plan's not going.
Exactly.
Get the input, and all right, we tried that. It didn't work. Let's try something different.
Yeah. I think that's one really good thing, that really good quantity or quality that Quanta has going on. We've got the ability to shift on a dime if we need to.
Yeah.
We're not being, our hands are not tied by Duke and Reggie and Carl. If we feel like we need to make a change, it's going to better the organization. Those folks are operationally led. If it's going to make a difference, then we shift. And so that's one thing that we tell everybody when they get on the team is if you need something that's constant, that's never going to change, you're probably not in the right spot there.
Yeah. If you look at the last 2 days of us being down here, why we're actually in this room today is it was distributing information and communicating from leadership within Quanta to leadership within the regions. And the message at the end of it is this information has to go further than this room. And if it doesn't, then shame on us. Yeah. It's the outcome, the negative outcome because of that, shame on us. And in the last 48 hours, there hasn't been one thing that's been discussed that that has been prefaced with, this cannot leave this room. And we are helping, guide organizations, but we're not the only captain, that's making the final turns. And it's dangerous when it gets that way. So, that, to me, that's something that Quanta does really well. The West region does really well, is make sure that we are all talking. And the purpose of even being here today is to make sure we're not holding that stuff too close to the chest, and that we're, potentially preventing a growth opportunity within the region. So,
something that you said in that email when you shared your bio was you're a student of leadership. I love that. We're probably all students of leadership. But you mentioned critical thinking right at the end, and that caught me. And I was like, that's something that I was finding when I was still in the field, was that ability to think critically through and problem solve is something that's lacking or definitely could be worked on. What are some ways you've practiced that, or what's some advice you have for?
Yeah, so the critical thinking side for me likely comes from the engineering side. I think what I would expand on that is there are a lot of different aspects of thinking that we all should be participating in, regardless of roles, regardless of whether it's personal or professional. There was a book recommended to me called Essentialism. I had an opportunity to read last year, and it talked about giving yourself the 15 minutes in the morning and the 15 minutes in the evening where you don't have your phone, you're not watching TV, and all you are doing is thinking about what you learned that day, where you're going, whether it's strategic, whether it's critical, whether it's big picture thinking. And we all need to really emphasize those opportunities to sit down and think through whatever challenges we may be going through. I think what I've seen myself in my career is that when I am getting bogged down or stressed, it's because I'm narrowing in too much on a specific task and my thought process, and I need to just give myself that time to decompress and think bigger. And where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish? I know I have a strong team that supports me, whether it's operations or our business, and that we don't need to do this alone. And I just think we need to be continuous students, which is something I kind of consider myself. Is the day we stop thinking deliberately and the day we stop trying to learn is very dangerous, whether it's in business or our personal life. So.
There's so many distractions now, so many distractions.
Oh, yeah.
So much biting for our attention. Like Jordan Peterson put a good one once. He's like, in order to do what I do, he's like, I had to physically lock myself in a room with nothing and just pick a topic and think about it. I'm like, how many times have you done that? Or like go for a walk with nothing in your ears. Just go for a long walk and just like pick a topic and think through that. We just don't do that.
Yeah.
I try to. I mean, I like the walk thing is important for me, and like that's where I do a lot of my thinking is either going on a walk or randomly a lot of my epiphany moments happen in the shower or some weird time. I was having this conversation with someone a couple of years ago about how when we're in the car, to your point about distractions, when you're in the car, you're always on the phone or something's going on, you got the radio on, and I turn everything off, and I'll just because I drive a lot, we all drive a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll just turn the radio off, and that's my time to think and just kind of get through some of that stuff. But you're right. You got to find the quiet moments, even if you're not doing it intentionally, the 15 minutes and the 15 minutes. That's a great idea. I just, some people aren't. I'm certainly not wired, to have that level of commitment. But
being a little deliberate has caused me to not have those critical thinking opportunities at 2 a.m. when I wake up.
100%.
And can't get back to sleep.
All the time. I was just going to say, I do most of my critical thinking when I wake up at 2 a.m. and then I can't go back to sleep.
It's helped get past that. So.
Yeah, and I think of, different times, throughout my career, and I never saw myself in the past as being somebody that would sit in an office and think, or just sit in just my own personal space and just think. But a person needs that. And, when we think about all the communication and everything that's got to take place, is one pet peeve that I always had coming up through the industry is communication. It's one thing that historically this industry is terrible at.
Yep.
I mean, and a lot of people, including myself, thought for years that they're really good communicators, but when you actually sit back and think about it, they're not that good.
Yep.
And so, that's when, when I'm in my office, I consider that air traffic control.
Sure.
There, it's where I'm a chief communicator, and I am just tying the dots and connecting the dots all day long. And the hardest part of leadership is getting people to talk to each other and connecting those dots. It's tough. It's tougher than one might think. We've experienced in the past where we have issues on projects, and the issues are between two different companies on the project, whether it be a contractor subcontractor relationship, and management goes to the job site and realizes that they're in trailers 50 feet apart from each other, and they're emailing each other back and forth about the issues. They can't just get in a room. They have a hard time just going out and getting a room these days and having the conversation. And so a lot of this stuff that we deal with can be a lot better if we just find a way to communicate. But a lot of people just don't know how to properly communicate. I think about a lot of the incidents that's happened within our region and within the industry. I don't know what the percentage of incidents, but I'll bet you there's a big majority of them that the reason that incident happened was failure to communicate.
Probably 99% of the time.
Yeah.
What are some tools then? Like, what are some great communication tools that you guys use? You talked about one there, your master hub for connecting all the dots is your office, and you're all day long, every day. Like, what else do you do to make people come together and talk about things?
Throwing grenades.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to just blow things up, right? And getting people to talk, right? And being present and just push people into a room and have the conversation. I know that several years ago, I believe it was in 2015, when I was president of Summit, Reggie and Carl approached me and they says, you gotta do something differently with the field. We have to find a better way to communicate, and I need you having weekly safety calls every week with your leadership, with your foreman level and above. And I looked at the other members of my leadership team and gosh, this is going to suck. Like, this is not going to be fun. We're going to get all kinds of pushback. Our guys are busy. They're not going to want to take a half hour every week and just talk about things. But I'll tell you that has evolved throughout the years to where they're still doing it today, because the field leadership actually wants to hear from leadership. They want to hear from you. Yeah. They want to know that you care about them. And it's not perfect by any means. I think we still have struggles getting that message down in the organization and more people involved with that. But it is something that has transpired over the years, and it takes executive leadership to keep that going. If we let it die on our side, it'll just die and it won't get done. But executive leadership has to be involved, has to be a part of it, and has to champion it through the next stages.
I would just add, I mean, you talk about the air traffic control in your office, and you do a really good job of picking up the phone. I'm actually kind of shocked that you know, like, as much of what's actually going on within the organization as you do, and you know to pick up the phone and call people. and have the safety meetings and all that. But just adding to that, and I know you'll agree, you got to show up, right? So it's really getting out and engaging, and not just us, like all levels of leadership, getting out and engaging with the field and with the office, and pulling people together, and just having, getting in a small room and having a conversation, right? It doesn't need to be difficult, doesn't need to be painful. To your point about like the in between the trailers, I mean, we've got that stuff happening in offices between cubicles. People can't even just talk to each other. So we were talking a bit yesterday, that is part of our job, is to really kind of force people to get together and look each other in the eyes like this, and let's just talk it out. Because once you do that, we start to recognize that we are just humans and we're all just doing this together. And sometimes it helps to bring the guard down.
Yeah. It's funny, I have a 17-year-old boy that works in the shop, and he comes home dirty every day, just head to toe. And he looks at me, and I come home clean, and he asks me, well, what did you do all day? And I laugh, and he says, well, son, I don't know what I did, but I just pushed people to communicate. And it's just, oh, Dad, like, really? Like, he's swinging a hammer, he's getting dirty all day long. And it certainly is a different, you don't see when you're out there in the field, you can see what you've done at the end of the day. You could see the amount of poles, you could see the amount of wire that you've strung. But when you're in a leadership role, you can't see it. Lots of times, I mean, I know you two are the same. When you get the question, what do you do all day? That's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, the success comes from understanding, I made two people that wouldn't ordinarily connect, they connected today.
Yeah.
That's the win, right?
Yeah. And it's a huge win. It's a huge win.
Yeah.
I also have, my oldest is 20 now, but just last year I was trying to get him to like get another job, and like, so I'd be like, hey, Knowles, did you send out some resumes today? Like, what'd you do? He's like, yeah, I applied online to these different spots. And I'm like, okay, I applied online. Did you print one off? And because he was struggling, like, finding a job. And I'm like, did you print off your resume? Did you go in somewhere and look somebody in the eyes and hand it to them? And no, I just went through their portal. And I'm like, I know that's the way you were brought up and you were raised. And yeah, everybody wants it to come in that way. But I'm guaranteeing you got a better chance of getting a job if you print that thing off, and if you go in and you try to talk to a manager or talk to somebody. And sure enough, you did it.
Yeah.
Next day, an interview. A couple weeks later, has a job.
Yep.
Like, there's something to it, right? You got to connect. You got to come together.
You got to have that FaceTime.
Yeah. But it's like, who are we training now? Like, and how are we training them? Are we training them just to submit things online and we never show face? Like, that same kid went through high school. He graduated online. He didn't even have like a high school graduation because, it was COVID times and things like that. But all his friends he met gaming.
Yeah.
They live in San Francisco. They live in Seattle. They live whatever, East Coast. He doesn't even met some of them.
Yeah.
Man, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's get into talking about some regional stuff. What's happening, president of Quanta West Regional, whatever.
Yeah.
Explain that and how that works a little bit in a nutshell so that we can grasp how the regions work within Quanta, and then let's get into talking about your region.
I think in a nutshell, there's essentially a line at Colorado, everything west of Colorado, including Hawaii, falls under the West region. There's roughly 16 operating unit companies that are a part of the West region. We've got it broken out into 4 different groups there, but there was one exciting note here of late is the acquisition of Cupertino in the West, and so they're not necessarily rolling up into the West region, but we think about the addition of Cupertino into the system here. They're plugging a lot of holes that we couldn't fill.
Talk about what Cupertino is if somebody doesn't know what it is.
So Cupertino's inside electrical company. Our company specialize right now. Outside construction is our forte there, but the addition of Cupertino brings that inside dynamics to the company, to the region, to Quanta, that we haven't had before. They're heavily integrated in data centers, mid-market solar, all over the country here. And so we think of the different synergies that our teams are going to have together. Right now, we're a full solution provider for these companies that are coming in wanting to do the data centers. We can now do the data centers all the way to the substations, T-lines, distribution, and wrap it all together. And so there's going to be some really neat dynamics. I was in Cupertino's office last Thursday when the final deal was done, and I'll tell you what, it was pretty dang neat to watch all that take place, and Duke and how he maneuvered through it, and the process and the calls with the investors and all of that, things that I never thought I would ever be a part of ever in my career. Now I'm all of a sudden sitting in an office, and Duke is talking to Wall Street about how Cupertino is going to affect the business. And the neatest thing about that whole conversation, so we had a town hall with Cupertino's employees. I think it was scheduled for 3:30 in that afternoon, and Duke had investor calls set up one right after another, and I sat and I listened to it, and 3:00 hit, and Duke hung up the phone, and he says, now to the meeting that really can make a difference and means more to me than anything, right? And that's the meeting with Cupertino, the meeting that really matters, right? And it's the people out there in the field, right? And so, all of this stuff that we do that Duke does for Wall Street and things like, yes, all that stuff matters, but I'll tell you what, you got leadership that truly cares about the people, and you feel it. I felt it in the room, and so it's pretty neat to watch him navigate through things like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I know this, like, the audience here is like primarily linemen, because that's kind of where it started, and the line side of things. But I know linemen, if you're like me, you got like a gypsy soul. They like to move around, like to try different things. I did the line work thing, then I tried the management thing, now I'm podcasting. Like, I know there's more people out there like me. If you're looking for opportunities to do something different but still stay within, like this industry or whatever, there's no better time than now. There's no better place than this place to do that. Yeah. Like, expand upon some of those opportunities you guys are seeing, opportunities now in the moment, and then, like, what are we seeing, like, near future?
Yeah, I'll just kind of touch on that. One of the things this week, we actually met with Kim Riddle, and she was talking about succession planning and how people think about succession so vertical, but Quanta in this industry allows it to be horizontal. The region helps that, because maybe there's an opportunity at Summit for an individual, a key rising star, and whether it's a field leader or an office leader, but there may be a Par West or a Patelco or another operating unit within the region. So that's awesome. I benefited from that type of opportunity historically, and so you can sit there, and like I mentioned, I think about the 1,000 employees every night is how do we keep developing and offering opportunity within Summit, and Quanta helps provide that opportunity. The amazing industry that we're working with as a backstop helps that, right? 20, 30 years of opportunity down the road for growth, whether it's transmission, substation, our traditional kind of bread and butter work, or getting into more of the data center opportunities, renewable opportunities. So where we used to think it was narrow before the region of single brand Summit Line Construction or single brand Par or whoever that may be, Derek Jensen said it great. We all fly two flags: the operating unit we're working for and the Quanta flag above that, and we have the opportunity to be on different flagpoles as the industry continues to grow and different regions are kicking off, and it's pretty awesome.
I think too, like there's all kinds of opportunities that's out there, but also too, people have to realize they got to maybe think differently for the opportunities. You can't have the same mindset that you have. You have to be able to change and adapt to different ways of thinking, because the perception of maybe when you're in the field of what you think happens in an office environment or in a management position, it's different, right? And just have to be able to change your mindset a bit, change your approach.
Love that.
Because it's different.
Yeah. And I would say it goes both ways too, right? And it could be office, somebody looking to get out in the field. I mean, I've had a few like field engineers and stuff that are like, that track doesn't really resonate with me. I want to go join the apprenticeship, right?
100%.
So, my advice, because there are so many opportunities out there, like if anyone's feeling stuck in this industry right now or in this organization, my advice to them would be to keep an open mind, because there's just so many things out there, right? And to your point, Dylan, like if you're ever that person that's not willing to continue to learn, like you won't thrive in this industry or
anywhere
really. Yeah,
But I also do think like there's a lot of people in our trade that are happy doing what they're doing.
Sure.
Right.
For sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. If somebody wants to be a journeyman lineman or a groundman or a foreman is all they aspire to be, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No. No, not at all.
Yeah, people development does not mean that you have to change your career to do that. You can be just a more well-rounded general foreman or project manager, and that's one of the things that we're hearing so much about, the size that each one of the organizations is. Quanta, people development's important, and that doesn't mean, again, that you have to move or take a bigger role, whatever that may be. It's just becoming have more depth to you as an individual.
A lot of self-development just
Exactly.
within whatever position that you're in.
And I'll tell you, we haven't been the best at that, quite honestly, in the people development side. And just recently, over the last 6-8 months, a year, it's been a heavy focus. When I give the keys of Summit Line Construction to Dylan to take over, I'm pretty sure I didn't give him any kind of people development plan there, because I didn't know how to do it there. And so now, with Dylan grabbing the reins of the organization, I'm very operationally led. I'm passionate about the field, but he thinks in a different mindset that I do and thinks down the road. We can't manage a $300 million company the way that we manage a $500 million company. And you have to continue to evolve, and that people strategy is a big part of it. And I think it's been a big push in our organization to get that established. Every company in the region.
Yeah, because you can scale that right up
you can
to the
scale
Quanta
it.
level, right?
You can scale it, and people want to see a path. They want to see a path to where they could be the CEO of the company one day, right? And those paths exist there. We just have to do a better job of showing the folks that work for us what that path looks like.
So what are some things we've started to do?
I can talk for Summit Line. I know Underground and a lot of operating units within the region also have that path, but we've fully mapped out expectations for different roles, development, what development looks like for different roles, and that's field and office, and then just general more well-rounded development opportunities. So it's not strictly going to be a change order course if you're a project manager. It's life courses, and it's human performance principle discussions, and just looking for those opportunities to, again, not necessarily change where you're going in the organization, but just allow you to be a more robust, well-rounded individual. And that's something that we've been really deliberate about. And it's new. It's in its infancy at Summit Line, at least, that in the last year, we've created a new role for an individual to really head. That individual knows the organization as well as anybody. That he's been there. Andrew has been there for close to a decade. So he's filled every role. He knows it. He's a great leader and mentor, and knows the direction that we all have a similar vision where we want the organization to go.
I think too, one thing that we're doing, typically when you think of HR, you think of the person that shows up as a grim reaper, right? and drops the hammer on things there. But it's not the case anymore. We're pairing up a people strategy person with HR and have them help develop the professional careers of our folks. And so I'm super passionate about it. And we had the discussion this last week. And one thing that I'm doing, I have a strategic hire that I've made that will be here first quarter of next year that will be paired right up with me as my people strategy individual. And my message to the teams was, you better get your stuff in order here. You better start thinking more along the people strategy side, because if you don't, this bus is going to run you over, and we're going to push you to do it. There. And so it's the message loud and clear. We got to get better at it, and we're pushing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the key for us to be successful here is to be more intentional about actually following those employees along their journey, rather than just, okay, now you're onboarded, see you later. And then Loren was providing an example yesterday. We've got an employee in one of the organizations that's been on a succession plan for the past 8 years that is in the same position that they were 8 years ago. I mean, we can't do that anymore, right? So it's just being a little more deliberate and intentional about just really holding people's hands and making sure that that the company is giving them what they need, but that they're also providing back to the company what the company needs too, right?
Amazing they stuck with it for 8 years too.
Yeah.
Without any movement,
It's embarrassing.
Well, it just is what it is, but it's like you're learning from it too, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. That's what you need to do. And I love that, because I actually get that question quite a bit. Like, okay, well, you're telling me there's room to grow, there's room to move. How? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? So putting those people in place, to have a people strategist person, that's huge. It's huge. It's everything.
Yeah, it's that type of out of the box thinking that we have to continue to think through. That's why, if anybody has an idea out there on something that we can do better, let's hear it. In this, I'm leaning on the team around me, and I hear a lot of noise and a lot of different things and a lot of different discussions going on, and then finally you just have to put the pieces of the puzzle together, what the people are really needing, and just go. So just listening to the team, and I'll tell you, through my career, and I'm probably a little bit stubborn, I never had a succession plan. I never knew what I was going to be doing. Right. And so I know there's a lot of people in the industry that probably think that way. Right. Well, it's okay to a point, but when you get to the scale that we are and wanting to get to where we want to go, you got to have a better strategy. You got to have a better plan, because people's got to see it.
I would say that I would just also again add that it's not all on the company sometimes too. You also have to have some ambition and have some sort of idea of where you want to go, right? Because saying that I want to be the CEO of the company, and maybe you're better as an individual contributor, you got to recognize those things too. And so I think it's a little bit of a two-way street.
I think it's the support in somebody saying, okay, you want to do this. I don't see what it is you want to do, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. And this right here, this conversation, this podcast is a great example of that. 2019, I started this thing. I had a lot of feedback that was that's dumb. Basically nobody's going to listen. What do you mean? What do you want to talk about? It was a no, resistance, right? And I was just whatever, I'm just going to do it anyway. And look where it goes. So you're right. You got to have a vision for yourself. You got to want to do something else if that's what you want to do. You want to progress, whether it's personally or progress within the business or the company. But then you got to have that support, and that's the piece that's been missing. But it's nice to hear that there's some change happening and some thought going into it.
And success isn't instantaneous.
Sure.
A completed course or development opportunity does not mean that
And it might fail.
you're where you need to be.
Yeah.
You talk about the start of the podcast, and Loren talked kind of humbly about the start of Summit Line, that there's a grind throughout that you have to be willing to endure to continue to improve. And that same thing goes for your own personal development. So it's just something that everybody needs to keep that in mind.
Patience.
And patience is key.
If you don't experience that grind, it's tough to understand it once you're there, right? We've seen so many people in the organizations, different organizations throughout the year, that have just been over promoted so quickly. They go from being in the field, and all of a sudden they're a VP, and there's so many gaps, so many layers that they miss to get that. And there's a lot of people in the industry, they're title chasers. They're worried about what kind of title they can get. The biggest title means a lot to them. In my opinion, I'd throw every title out of the freaking window at this organization and go, right? But we do have to have structure with titles, no doubt, but over promotion too quickly without experience in that grind, we've seen too many people fail in that capacity. Sure. And so a lot of us as leadership, it's our job to really mentor the leadership along the way to where there is that grind. They do experience that grind to get to the next level, because if you go to that next level and don't experience and all that, it's a recipe for failure.
Yeah, because you lack the experiences that would make you successful, right? Like you got to go through some tough times, unfortunately, in any walk of life. This business is no different. You got to take some lumps in order to understand how you're going to react in that situation, right?
Yep. I went to Nepal last year and hiked to Mount Everest Base Camp. The only way to get there is 1 foot at a time.
That's right.
And go through that grind, or else you're never going to experience that payoff, right?
That's
it's
right.
the same thing. You just have to grit it out and do it. Yeah. What are you guys most excited about in the floor, most excited about for your area? Like we talked about Cupertino, that's super exciting. What's happening in the West? What are you excited about? Just drive into that a little bit more.
I'll start because, I've only been with Quanta for a year, but I feel like I stepped into like a great time where, at a president's meeting in January, the whole theme of the whole thing was trust and being better together and all that. And again, outsiders' perception is that, and it sounds like just from the stories behind the walls that I've heard, is that was not the case just a few years ago, right? Definitely very siloed within Quanta, and all the opcos were kind of in it for themselves. And I've always been somebody to try to bring people together and see what we could do if we work better. If we put everything together, where can we go? And we've got some amazing opcos, especially out here in the West, that all, like, if we tie them all together, like we talk about the end-to-end thing. Like we can do so many different things for our customers, and there's so many different ways that we can tackle the problems of the industry right now. And so what I'm most excited about is just to see that all coming together, and the leadership team that we have right now all just really gelling and working together and not doing the dog eat dog thing, which is for me, that's what's the most exciting thing that I see in the near and medium term.
Yeah, I agree. The collaboration within the region is something that, being here before the regional side of it, you didn't necessarily see. I think we heard on your podcast many times, if Quanta could get that down, it's unstoppable. We're getting it down, and you're seeing that not just within the regions, but collaboration with Blattner on different renewable opportunities, bringing in 10, 15, 20 operating units on the major projects. And that's not easy. I don't want to undermine that at all. There's a lot of challenges to get those up and running, but we're seeing success with those in the West specifically, and I'm confident that same approach can be successful throughout the rest of the regions. I just go back that the industry is providing so much, and we now have the robustness within the organization between the Blattners, renewables, the service line leads, the capabilities of the operating units, that there really isn't a gap that exists anymore. It's just the willingness to go do the work and be successful and deliberate about being successful when you go do it. So it's a hell of an opportunity. One of the things I love about meeting with our crews and having that conversation is that we are in a position that for every one of us can retire successfully with this organization, with the opportunity and the way we have it structured right now.
I'll tell you what I'm excited for. I'm excited for the people. There's a ton of opportunity here, and as I think through it, in my career as a lineman, and when I was coming up through the trade back in 2002 and journeyman lineman, I never had the opportunity to go work in California. I was very limited in where I could go there, and I think about the diversity of the different types of work that we have going on in the region. We have distribution work, we have transmission work, we have bare hand work, we have substation work, hell, we have data center work now, right? And there's so many different avenues that an individual could go. And so I'll tell you another thing that excites me is just watching the leadership around us grow. I'm seeing different leaders in the organization step up and do things that they themselves probably never saw them do. We're seeing individuals go from a journeyman lineman in the field to standing up on stage and talking to an organization and leading an organization, and it's pretty damn powerful to see that. And I think the one thing that makes me tick more than anything is just seeing the people all around us continue to grow with the company, and we got to continue to do that, and the company needs it. We're going in the right direction, but the diversity, it used to be a day and an age where everybody wanted to journey out, go to utilities so they're home at night, right? And that's all fine and dandy, but I think there's ability to move throughout the entire region, throughout the entire company, throughout the entire country. If you want something different, you want a different quality of life, then the reality is that we probably have that within Quanta here. We just have to communicate it out and understand what it is the individual wants.
I opened my podcast with Duke like that as well. It was like a thank you, to be honest. And people take it a couple of different ways. They look at it with an open mind and go, okay, that's pretty cool. There's opportunities. And then other people are like, oh, you're just trying to sell Quanta. But that's like never been my heart. And I think I've got that point across on this thing multiple times. Is like when I became a Quanta lineman, the door was kicked open for opportunities. And now I had this like bucket list of shit that I wanted to accomplish in the trade. And it was linear for a while because it was like, as a lineman, I want to do this, work with helicopters, check. I want to become bare hand certified and work on bare hand jobs, check. I want to travel, check. And they were all within Quanta. And then I was like, I want to try some management. All right, I'll go do that for a while. And then I was like, I'm going to be an instructor. And then I'm going to start a podcast. It's all being within this organization, and I don't know how to tell people any other way. It's like, I'll preach it because it's just fact. I got to do so many different things, horizontal, vertical, like whatever it wants, like industry related, non-industry related. It's all available here. And I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but I don't know how else to tell you. It's just facts.
Yeah, it's available. I mean, there's no doubt. We've got our holes, we've got our gaps, we've got a lot of things that we need to get better. But putting myself in the shoes of a young apprentice back in the day there, and being able to maneuver the way that we're going to be able to maneuver here now moving forward, it's exciting times. I would think if we can get our folks to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Innovations in the way of safety. What are we seeing? What are you liking? What do you want to see improvement on in the way of safety?
I really want to see the passion for safety driven as far down in the organization as we possibly can there. And I think when I listen to my bosses talk about it, and The way I think about it is, you can put any kind of check the box training out there that you want. Is that truly making our company better? Or are we just checking a box and just say, oh, I attended a safety meeting, or I did capacity model training? The way to do safety better is to find a way to emotionally connect that safety to the individuals out there in the field, right? And all in the organization. And so, I've challenged the team to, if we're doing check the box type safety, we're doing it wrong. And we got to find different ways to push it in the organization. Again, we've got our struggles with communication all over the place, and we're rolling out the capacity model, and then you go out to a field and you identify a crew that's not even heard of the capacity model. And we've got our gaps. How do we get that out there? And it's all the leadership grabbing on board, because maintaining that culture, it's not just a one and done. You have to, as management in the organization, you have to continue to evolve it. You have to continue to bring it up. And so if we think we're going to roll out the capacity model and just put a PowerPoint on the screen and think everybody's going to get it, we're dead wrong. And so maintaining that culture, it's hard work. It's hard being a leader in this company, but it's the leadership that's got to continue to find ways to drive that into the organization, and the why behind why we're doing it. I mean, we're doing it because we care. We're installing cameras in vehicles because we care, because we know that vehicle incidents are the biggest hazard that we have. Driving every day is the single biggest hazard that our employees face every single day. Like, nobody can argue that.
Yeah.
And I've been in a lot of meetings with Duke along the lines of this. Like, we're doing it because we care. We want the people to be safe behind the wheel. It's not some boogeyman that's sitting there watching you doing what you're doing in the cab of the truck. It's because it's providing teaching moments to where it can make or help our companies and our employees go home safer at the end of every day. It's still, to this day, it just drives me crazy that I drive down the road and see Quanta Company trucks out there and the employee's not wearing a seatbelt. Like, that's capacity model 101. You're not building capacity into what you're doing, is just driving down the road. Like, why are we missing this, right? And so there truly is a passion around sending our employees. I've been around a lot of incidents and accidents in the industry and met with too many families, and it's when you go through something like that, you never want to do it again.
Yeah, I always heard, oh, you work with electricity and heights, it's pretty dangerous. And I was like, honestly, it's not the most dangerous thing. We train a lot for that, and we got that kind of down. But it's the driving or being around vehicles, even just working around the base of the bucket truck on the side of the road is deadly. Yeah,
or working in yards and stuff like that. And I'll answer your question a little bit differently, and it's not very innovative. You asked about innovations. My idea is not very innovative. It's actually pretty fundamental. And you touched on it, it's the communication. I think there's just somehow, some way, and I'm not saying that this happens everywhere, but all of the major incidents that I've been involved with in the past several years have all surrounded some form of miscommunication, and in a lot of cases boils down to some form of pride, and usually two guys that are too proud to tell each other that they're watching the other guy's back. And so, again, it's fundamental to me. It's just like, let's just have the conversation and go back to that three-way communication. Dylan, I'm about to do this. Steve, I heard you. You're about to do this. Right on, I'm doing this. Right? Like, we could avoid so many of the pain and heartache that we've gone through over the last several years if we would just slow down to do that.
You know what? It just came to me. Sorry to interrupt you for a second, but this just came to me. Like, safety people are really great at safety. You guys, leadership's really good at leadership. Marketing people are really good at telling stories and getting people to buy in. Safety teams should have their own internal marketing specialist that isn't thinking about big brand and like, it's how do I better communicate? Because that's what marketing is communications.
Sure.
It's how do I communicate to our people to do this and that? Like, because safety people aren't thinking about that. They get the bigger picture idea. They come up with, the capacity model. That's huge.
Yeah.
But how do we communicate that? Like, they might not have any clue on actually how to get people to buy into that. I don't know.
Yeah. You talked about the innovation. To me, the innovation, a big part of the innovation is done because the capacity model is present. That's the innovation. Where we come in is, and we don't want to beat up communication, but the biggest fallacy of communication is that it has occurred. And we think about where we are falling short potentially is that we are not taking every opportunity in the field with our teams to make sure we are continuously coaching on the capacity model and continuously having those discussions. And where we start to see the groups, Loren touched on, where somebody might go through the training and within a couple of weeks that conversation is dying off, it's because we're failing as leaders, myself and leaders throughout the organization, to continuously have those conversations the way we should be day in and day out. I loved what you said about there's this pride of, I don't want to insult you by telling something you might know, but in reality, being tough is being willing to have those conversations.
That's love.
And yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And we need to get to the point where I always kind of say it, communicate till it's insulting.
Yeah.
And I'm not even good at that because we all have that gap. But that don't take it as an insult, but just know that the intention is there, that I want to make sure we are clear that I'm going to move this or you're going to move that. And we know that energy hazards don't take a break. And if we're not prepared for them, if we don't have capacity, and if we don't know if it's enough, then we shouldn't be moving. And that's the type of conversations and coaching we need to continuously be having, because our organizations are constantly changing just due to the nature of the workforce, and we want to have this absorption throughout the industry. That takes time, and it takes more than just the initial training. And nobody's an expert after day one of calculus, and that's the same thing on the capacity model. So
one thing that we're also doing that I've noticed throughout the years in the industry, we're almost creating some communication silos, and we don't even realize it out there in the field.
Sure.
There, when you think about the evolution of the equipment and all of that throughout the years, I remember when I was in the tools, you went out to the job site, you had a foreman truck, you had a bucket truck, and you had a line truck. And these days we're seeing more and more of 2 bucket trucks out on the job, or a squirt boom, a single man squirt boom out there, and a bucket truck. And then you're seeing more and more of 1 person in each bucket truck, right, in the air, right? And rather than, back in the day, you always had that teaching environment where you had a journeyman in the air with an apprentice, and you're teaching that apprentice, and you're having that 3-way communication in the same bucket, right? And so, I think the innovation in a lot of ways is good, but kind of going back to the basics and some of this,
Sure.
and how we used to do it is also something we need to think about. When you think about it, if you're taking more equipment out of the job site, the costs go up, but your exposure also goes up, because what's our biggest hazard that's out there is driving, right? You're driving now 2 bucket trucks out there to the job site. Don't get me wrong. I know that there's projects that need that, but sometimes if you think about it in a different way, even though you might have to move the bucket truck a couple of times to accomplish what you're doing, you're eliminating any kind of silos there, and you got 2 people working together for one task.
Yeah. It's a great point. It's how we learned everything. Your bucket partner, you and your bucket partner getting synced, building that chemistry where you could just reach back and the tool's in your hand in the right position.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And if that tool wasn't ready, that apprentice was a bad day.
100%.
I remember I was on the other end of that stick. So.
Okay, I've been asking this question or questions around mental health a lot lately. Talk about managing, being a leader and still keeping up with, personal endeavors, managing mental health. Hell, even talk, what are we doing as an industry, and then what do you do personally to help, work through mental health issues?
Yeah, I think, this weekend, sure, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a professional bass fisherman. I like to think I'm a professional bass fisherman.
We all are, right?
Good clarification. That was needed.
But I mean, it's you have to have something to fall back on. You have to have that thing that you do. And so I'm actually fishing a tournament this weekend with a good friend of mine that has been in the trade for many years with me. And then the second day he's fishing with his wife and I'm fishing with my wife. And so it's a pretty neat deal. But when you think about the mental health side of it, and you think about all the temptations that are out there in the industry, our people in the field go through far more struggles than we realize, and that struggle every day is real. And when we think about breaking down, and this last 4th of July holiday, we had a call, and there was a lot of management on the call, and I believe it was Kevin Bigelow from the field that chimed in and says, hey, we all have to remember that a lot of us go home at night and we're with our families and we're with solid families, but there's people that work for us that don't have a solid home to go to, that come from a broken home, that are going home to something that they're going to have to deal with that they've been putting off for a long time, right? And so, the struggle and the temptations out there, with alcohol abuse and drug abuse, and they're real, and we have to realize that as a company. And it's all part of leadership, emotionally connecting with those folks in the field. If you have a problem, we need to be big enough to be able to recognize that as leadership. I think that just understanding, you can, if you truly know your team as well as you think you do, you'll know if they're going through something emotionally there. And I think from a leadership standpoint, it's big. You have to know and understand what makes your employees tick, right? Understand what's going on in their personal lives. Don't just use them as a tool that comes out of the hall and just go get the job done. And I don't care about what's going on in your personal life, right? This is real. The struggle is real. Yeah. Be involved with it.
Yeah. If you can't respect and appreciate and care for your coworker, even if I don't even know you, there's a gap that we maybe don't need within our organization, right? And I think the biggest thing is you hear that conversation about mental health, and you think about what does that mean is potentially a weakness, but that's not a weakness. That's a reality that there could be caused by a ton of variables, and we have the opportunity specifically as a leadership team, and we have the obligation to provide tools and resources to support individuals that are potentially going through those challenging situations, and to really make sure everybody realizes that there is no shame in any one of those situations. And I respect you as an individual, regardless of the good or bad that you bring, as long as you can recognize we're in this together, we're going to be successful together. And I want every individual to succeed, and hopefully we are all starting at that point. And there shouldn't be any ill will to anybody. We're just, hopefully that should be maybe a human principle that we start with, and that's where my mind's at, because there are just so many variables that, as Loren mentioned, especially you think about our employee base, so many of them are, go spend a year and a half or 2 years in Wamsutter or Wyoming, and it can wear on people. And then you throw in the distance from family and the potential stress of the workday, and it's a lot to manage from a personal standpoint, and we need to be there for our employees to help through those times when they need us.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add to that?
I think both of them covered it well. I mean, something that's hard not to think about all the time. I am glad to see that there's so many more resources being provided these days. There's so many different programs and stuff that's specific to our trade that are out there now and available. And I know that Quanah's bolted up with, I can't remember the name of that company that we signed on with there during the safety symposium. But it's a struggle.
I was talking about this the other day with the lineman I had in here, and a lot of it can come also down to just like straight up to the individual, and I'll call you out there. Like, you gotta make some decisions, find a way to make a decision to like get off of the couch, whatever that couch looks like to you. Get off the couch, like get up, get out the door, start with a walk, then hit a gym, like find a hobby. Like, it'll progress, but you have to start with something. And it's so hard, and I'm not saying it's not like an incredibly difficult decision, because people do have things going on, bad homes, bad place, like they're just not in good situations, and it's a lot easier to grab a drink or do some drugs and take that away instantly. But over the long haul, but you got to make those decisions, and nobody can make them for you. You have to make the decision, and sometimes it starts with as simple as getting up. Just, I don't know how many times I've even done it myself, just like hotel rooms. I hate hotel rooms. Like, again, I'm finding myself in a hotel room, and I'm like, even it's a nice place, but it's still just this room. It's this box. It's not your box. You're just sitting there, and you get sucked into like looking at your phone or like whatever, right? It's like, you got to make decisions. Stand up. Okay, shoes are on. Okay, shoes are on. Out the door. Okay, now I'm walking. Okay, now I'm like clear. I can, think.
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, for me, it's easy to say this, but like, people are going through real stuff, and it's not as simple as like hoping for the next thing or whatever. But for me, it's like, I spend a lot of my time in hotel rooms these days too, and for me, it's just thinking about like later this afternoon, I'm getting on a flight to go back to see my 3 kids, my wife, and that's where I pour all of my energy into. But like you said, it's not that simple. Not everybody's got that situation. So.
Yeah. A few years back, when I first moved to Utah, I got a text message from a buddy in Chicago saying, hey, this guy, he may work for Summit, is posting some stuff online. Do you recognize the name? It wasn't in Summit employee, but it wore on me. I remember reaching out to Kevin Bigelow, he mentioned earlier, to get the other company's name, to make sure their leadership was aware of it. And I hope that every one of the 60,000 employees within Quanah have that same goal of getting people help, because you never know, somebody might not be able to get themselves up, and we need to be able to provide all those tools to make that phone call. In the darkest of times, I'm hoping somebody is there for me if I'm ever in that situation, and we have a big team to be there, and we have the tools.
Starts with talking about it.
Exactly. And we have the Summit, we have our Safety and Leadership Conference. That's a topic there deliberately, because there is no shame. We're all tough. I get it, but bad situations may happen, and we all could need it at some point.
Okay, I've had you guys for an hour 45. Open the floor. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about that we maybe didn't talk about? Be most excited about in the near future?
I think I want to thank you for the opportunity, and it's important for me, and you're going to see more of this from our region. It's important for me for the hands, for the people in the field, for the people in the offices, to really understand us as people and our leadership team and what we're all about. Both these gentlemen that are here with me, both Stephen and Dylan, I've got a long history with Dylan. I remember him from years ago and worked with him back in New York, and he had long flowing hair at that time there, but he's struggling in the hair department right now. But
says the pot.
it was never my claim to fame having hair, but it was one of the toughest decisions that I ever had to make in my life when handing over the keys to Summit Line Construction to an individual. And one thing that I've realized throughout my years is I've got limits on what I can do. That Dylan's doing things. I saw the organization needed to grow and think differently, do different things that me with an operational mind, I couldn't do it there. And so with Dylan's enthusiasm and just, I know that he's an individual that's going to pick up the phone when there's a problem. I know he's going to pick up the phone any time of the day, and he's going to dig, and he's going to dig deep, and he's going to be part of the organization. And so it was a tough decision. There was a lot of people that could have probably taken that role, but I brought Dylan in and couldn't be happier, and I'm excited for the team to get to know him a little bit more. And with Steve, he's been with us for a year, and him and I had probably a 6-month courting before we actually made it happen there. And it is one of the hardest things to do, is to go out and hire an individual at a different level, at a high level in the organization, and then bring them in.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to find the right fit, and I knew I had to look for the qualities that really mattered to me. And it's somebody that cares about our people and cares about the organization, and is just willing to grind as hard as the rest of the team is. And so, although he's only been here a year, getting the message from him out there that he is one of us, and I want everybody to see the same qualities and traits that I've seen with Steve when I started talking to him. And it's not easy. He stepped into some really tough things there in California there, but the way that his leadership has come about, I mean, I just want everybody to get to know these two individuals the way that I know them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I just had my 1 year anniversary, I think, last week, and I shot Loren a text, and I meant it. I said, look, man, thanks for scooping me up. I'm literally having the most fun I've ever had in my entire career, and it's genuine. I mean, we're going through a lot of changes. Loren saddled me up with two, very storied and two legacy organizations in Par West and underground construction that have just tremendous history, right, in the industry as a whole. And so that honor and privilege is not lost on me. And but we've got an amazing team that's really got a lot of heart and really wants to do a lot of things, and we're shaking the industry up. I think we're trying to kind of, again, partnering up with the rest of the operating companies out here in the West, and it's just, we're having a lot of fun. So it hasn't been exactly a smooth paved road, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. And I think that's important, right? Like we got to celebrate successes and the wins and all that stuff. But I learned from a mentor of mine by the name of Dale. Dale, what's up? That you also have to celebrate when you're down, right? And so, sure, it's fun to hit that grand slam and go out and throw the big party, but when your team is struggling and they've been grinding, I think they appreciate you more when you're like, let's pack it up early today, guys. Let's go grab, guys and gals, let's go grab that beer. I think your teams will appreciate you a hell of a lot more when you do that, when things are tough than the opposite. So it's exciting times, I think, and I'm just stoked to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Again, guys, thanks for thinking outside the box, even though it's not. Podcasting shouldn't be outside the box to people anymore. I was actually, you look at guys that write books now, they go on their book tour to promote their books. All they do is go on podcast tour now and talk about their books, right? It's a great way to communicate. So thanks for being the first of hopefully many.
Yeah, it's appreciated that we can be.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you.
Yeah.
I hope you guys got some value out of that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I just want to draw your awareness to a couple of other things. So we make these podcasts, yes, but it's not the only thing that we put out as far as content. Our social medias are full of valuable cuts from the podcast itself, as well as just a bunch of other educational stuff and entertainment. So go follow us at Powerline Podcast on all social media platforms. And then also YouTube. I don't think that a lot of you are aware of this, but we don't just load these podcasts onto YouTube. We also make vlogs, which are super educational, entertaining, great place to direct people to learn about the industry, learn about the trade, or just learn about what's going on within either Quanta or the Powerline industry in general. So hit up our YouTube channel. Again, it's at Powerline Podcast. You can catch those vlogs on there. We also load a bunch of other extra content in video form. We try to up the quality every time we do this. We try to up that quality. So hit up the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subbed to all those platforms. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you again soon. We'll see you again soon. Peace.